Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our afternoon session, What's Your Standard with Hazel Walker. My name is Mark Graber. I'm the Executive Director for Perth North and Regional Western Australia. Just a couple of housekeeping bits of information. There is no translation occurring in this room, so if you need translation, that is going to be a bit of an issue. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce my dear friend Hazel Walker today, and she's doing a presentation called What's Your Standard. As you can see behind me, she's the Executive Director for Indiana, and she is the National Franchise Development Director for Australia. She's also my dear friend, and I wanted to share a couple of things about why this is important. Some of you will have heard that in Australia we coin certain things that Hazel says, we call them Hazelisms. Ivan used to call it misbehazeling. And there's a couple of things, some of you might have heard this before. So one of our favourite Hazelisms is, what's the question behind the question? It is what it is. Not my circus, not my
monkeys.
You can't fix stupid. Lipstick on a pig, it's still a... They're all Hazelisms. So Hazel does a lot of training at the global level, and she has many accolades for that in the way of travelling around the globe to educate as many people as she can. She's a great giver of information. The What's Your Standard presentation we use in our leadership team training in Western Australia and across Australia. But my favourite quote that I have to say about Hazel came actually from her son Stephen. And we were doing direct training together in Brisbane, and it was the day before the Cubbies were winning the championship. And I was saying, it's quite difficult sometimes working with your mother. He goes, no kidding. And I said, so, how would you define it? And he said, well, this is my favourite quote about Hazel. She said, I got something wrong once, and I didn't like it. Ladies and gentlemen, Hazel Walker.
So the rule is he can't speak to my son anymore. They corrupt each other. So is everybody in here a director of some type? ED, DC, everybody a director? Because this is a director session, not a member session. This particular session came about, let me explain why this happened. I've noticed over the years of all of my training that we are constantly trying to grow chapters. Right? Our goal is to constantly grow chapters. But our chapters, quite often we just throw new members on top of old. Right? But we never change the culture in the chapter. And if the culture stays the same, and the standard stays the same, you end up getting the same result. You go from a chapter of 15 to a chapter of 25 or 30, right back down to a chapter of 15. Because nothing changed. You only just added a whole bunch of new people to the same problem. So this presentation came about because I went, how do we take a look to see what needs to be changed? And how do we get the chapters to change? So one of the things I've learned over time is you cannot tell them to change. You cannot tell them what their standard is. In fact, with a B&I chapter and full-grown adults who own businesses, you cannot tell them anything. You have to lead them to discover. And so that's one of the things about teaching adults, is teaching them to discover what they need to know. So I put this program together and I've tested, we've worked it with a lot of chapters, and it's pretty effective. So I'm going to run through this as I would with a membership committee. This presentation is only ever done with the leadership team. So I'm going to act as if you're the leadership team and the membership committee of a chapter. So there'll be some time for you guys to think, pair, share, come together, talk, and discuss. And there's work to do. So you might turn to my page. There's a Palms report there. You're going to need it. So it's what's your standard? And let me see if I can get this to work. There you go. So this is the first question we ask the leadership team and the membership committee. Do your chapters know what their standard is and what they're operating at? Do they know what their standard is and what are they operating at? I will tell you they don't know. Because your chapters have accepted a standard, they have not set a standard. You cannot tell them they have to discover it, so I'm going to help you discover it so you can help them discover it. You do this workshop with leadership team and membership committee. Do not do this workshop with the entire chapter, because you'll have members that'll come right back at you. You do it with the leadership team so that the leadership team can lead the members. So you're helping them to discover it, and then they'll go back to the chapter and you'll understand more. But you don't do it with the entire chapter. It's not for the members. Things you will need in the room when you're doing this. You will need a flip chart or a whiteboard. You will need markers, pens, pencils, and you'll need a PALMS report, enough to give one to everybody. To the entire leadership team and membership committee, you give one to each of them, because they're going to work this process together. You're going to facilitate it. Your first job is to explain the why. So when you're working with adults, you have to give them the why behind everything. Why comes before how. Why comes before what. It's why, how, what. You don't go anywhere till they understand why you're going there. Once they've got the why, they'll follow along with you. So you explain the importance of having standards for yourselves and our business. How many of you have a standard that you live by? Right? Well, I have my standards. Sometimes I have to remind the guys that I date, I have standards. This isn't it. Right? You're not meeting that standard. So I have standards. We all have standards. How many of you have standards for your business? You have a standard that you don't fall below that standard, because that is your standard. It's also important to know where the red line is. So your chapters need to know where their red line is, and if you know your standards, you're always able to stay above it, right? The standard, I have a red line. Falls below that red line, it's below my standard, not good. But do your chapters know where their red lines are? And they usually don't. If B&I is part of your business, do you know what standard it is working from? So I say that to the membership committee and leadership team. If B&I is part of your business, do you know where is it coming from? At what level are you working? They do not. They do not. They've just accepted. So our goal is to help them to discover the answer to this question. Is it above the red line or below the red line? Is it above or below? They won't have an answer. They'll say it's above. They'll quite often tell you it's above. Have you set the standard, or have you accepted a standard? Have you set the standard, or have you just accepted a standard and allowed it to evolve? And do you even know? Do you even know? So, how do you help them discover it? How do you help them discover their standard? Give a copy of the PALMS report to each individual. Now, you guys have a copy of a PALMS report right there in front of you, so we're going to work on it. We are going to work on that PALMS report, so you'll need pencils, highlighters, whatever you want to use. Cross off on that PALMS report is a 6-month PALMS report. 6-month PALMS report. So the first thing you have to do is go down that list and figure out, go down the list and figure out who has not been a member for very long. So in this case, it's 6 months. Who has not been a member for 6 months? Cross their name out. Put a line all the way through. So you can take a moment, put the line all the way through. If you were doing this with a 1-year PALMS report, like you had a new leadership team and you want them to set their standard, you would do anyone who's not been a member for a year. On the whiteboard that you'll have in front of the room, you would write these letters on there. A, L, S, R, V, 1 to 1 in dollars. What you're going to do today is at the bottom of each column, you'll write the answers that I'm going to walk you through. So the first thing you want to do, as you're looking at that PALMS report, is I want you to circle the person, circle the most absences. By the way, this Palms report came from an active chapter who considers themselves a showcase. Right? They consider themselves pretty elite. So what's the number? And at the bottom of the column, write that biggest number. The most absences. Next, the L. Who has the most lates? Quite often when you look at a Palms report for a chapter, you'll notice nobody has any lates. Right? They all show up on time, except for when you're there. So what does that tell you? No one's recording the latenesses. Substitutes. And, well, this one's got a few latenesses. I know that this chapter does record lates. Next, substitutes. Circle the one that has the highest number of substitutes. And write the number at the bottom of the column. Highest number of substitutes. You are not counting the people you marked out. Highest number of substitutes. Now, there's a column there, referrals given in and referrals given out. Total those up. Referrals in and referrals out. And give me the lowest number. Now we're going for the lowest number. Who's passed the lowest number of referrals combined? In and out. Write it at the bottom. What is the lowest number? Is everybody on this? Or have I gone too fast? Yep, total in and out number. Next is visitors. What's the lowest number of visitors? Who's got, I'm not caring about the who, but what's the lowest number? It should be a 0. Because every chapter you go to, there's a 0. You've got members who don't invite, right? So you'd put a 0. After that, who's doing the least amount of one-to-ones? What's the number for the least amount of one-to-ones being done in this chapter? Least amount of one-to-ones? And then, take a look at the closed dollars. And look at the people who've been members the longest and the closed dollars. You should see about 3 people that have only got about 2,000, close to 3. What's the lowest thank you for closed business in that list? Especially from the older members. Because the newer members, I expect them to be low, right? They're newer. But if they've been there 27 months, they should have a much higher number. Or weeks. And put that number at the bottom of the page, under the column. So while you're looking, I'll tell you a story. I did this with my director team. I gave all of my directors copies of the Palms reports for the chapters they were managing. And one of the directors came into the meeting just as we were getting ready to start this presentation. I was doing the training. And she said, wow, I just visited a B&I chapter. I am telling you, if every one of our chapters operated like this chapter, our franchise would rock it out. They are flawless. And I gave her the Palms report. And I said, let's check and see. At the end, when we were all done, she went, oh my God, they are missing so many things. They're not keeping attendance. People aren't tracking latenesses. People aren't showing up. Because we don't look at the numbers enough. We don't pay enough attention to the numbers that are going on in our chapters. And our director consultants weren't checking. Right? So while we think when we walk into the room we got this dynamic chapter, the reality is when we dig deeper, it's not working in the foundation. The weak foundation, which means we're eventually coming to a collapse. So, your highest number of absences was 12, right? Circle the most lates. 2? Most substitutes? Shocking. There's some sub-abuse going on here. Some sub-abuse right here. All of these lead you to questions, don't they? We have questions. What's going on? Referrals in and referrals out. Minimum number, 3. Was it a new member? Was it the last one, number 27? 27 is visitors. Third one, 00. Okay, you can put 00. I'm good with it. Let me tell you something. Your chapter, your leadership team and membership committee, they'll know the answers to this. They know. Because they'll tell you all the reasons why this is true. Right? As we're going through it. Oh, well, that's because. Right? They'll give you the stories. Circle the least number of one-to-ones. Or the least number of visitors was 0. Everyone got 0? One-to-ones? 2? Least number? Because you marked out all the new members, right? Thank you for closed business. Yep, that's a member who's been a member 27 months. It means they've been there every week for 27 weeks. They've been there, that's an old member. That's all they're generating. So what you're doing when you're doing this with your chapter is you're walking them through the numbers and helping them identify. Right? Because this is what they have to understand. The minimum that you accept is the maximum you can require. The minimum that you accept is the maximum you can require. So if we say that one person can have 12 absences, that means all persons get 12 absences. We can't demand more from anyone else. If one person is allowed to have 21 substitutes, all persons are allowed to have 21 substitutes. The minimum we accept is the maximum we can require. That also goes to your director team EDs. The minimum you accept from one of your director consultants is the maximum you can expect from the rest. So I had a chapter call me up, and I was managing a chapter in Australia. The VP called me up and he said, hey, we're putting this member on, we're going to open the position of this particular member. I said, okay, what for? Attendance. And I said, all right, let me get into the system and take a look. Now this particular member had missed 6 meetings. So they were going to open her position. So as I'm looking, I'm going, wait a minute. You've got 5 more members that have missed 7 and 8 meetings. Are you getting rid of all of them? No, just her. Why just her? Well, we've talked to her about it. Have you talked to all the rest of the guys about it? Yeah, but they have good reasons. I said, no, it doesn't work that way. What you accept from one, you must accept from all. And so you cannot hold her more accountable than you're holding the rest of the people. Therefore, you cannot open her position. Why is that important? You've got to have consistency. What happens if you kick me out for 6 when I know that there's other people that have had 7, 8, and 9? Where am I going? We're going to see a lawyer. There's going to be a problem, right? There's going to be a problem. And that's not what we're in business for. The minimum you accept from one is the maximum you can expect from all. So once I say that to the team, they sit quietly and look at those numbers. They sit quietly. Now the vice president, when I told him that, he said, well, good luck in your little black and white world, and slammed the phone down. Well, okay. That's the way it goes, right? You can't hold people to different accountability. So you're going to ask, once you've discovered all the numbers, you're going to ask these questions, and you guys are going to pair up and come up with the answer for these. And I ask these questions, and then I'm pretty silent after each question. I say, how do you feel about your standard? How do you feel about your standard? Because this is the standard that your chapter is operating under. These are your red lines. How do you feel about that? And I just go quiet. How do you feel about that? Because I want them to just really take that in, that, oh my gosh, look what we're doing or not doing. Right? The next question, would these be acceptable in your own business? Would you run your business and let your employees behave this way? Would they be acceptable? If B&I is part of your business, is this acceptable? You've paid a lot of money for this. Do these numbers drive you to success? Are they driving you and your chapter to success? Are you making excuses for the others? Because by this point, as you've walked through this, they've told you the story of everybody. Oh, well, he's missed 12 meetings because, he's a really good member, he's a founder, and he's an architect. And when he's here, he passes some good referrals. But, he can't always be here because he's an architect. There's a story. Oh, well, she's had 21 substitutes because, da-da-da, and they've got all these stories. Oh, they know. Right? They know the story. They just haven't handled it. They haven't dealt with it. So are you making excuses for others? I have enough trouble making excuses for myself, let alone everybody else. Right? Are you proud of these? Are you proud of these? And then I just be silent for a while and let them sit with it. And then someone will start talking, and once they start talking, then we can go on to the next piece of this. Because what's our ultimate goal here? What do we want to happen? Right, to get them to raise their standards, but they have to want to do that. I can't force them. How many of you have taught them to enforce the attendance policy at leadership training? And still we've got 12. And 6s and 8s. It's not that we don't tell them how to do it, we do. But they have to want to do it and see the value of doing it. If you were going to choose, this is where you guys are going to talk about it. If you were going to choose 2 things to fix that would have the biggest impact on your chapter, what 2 things would you choose? So pair up to the person next to you and talk about what are the 2 things you would choose. Have a conversation. What are the 2 things that you can change that will change everything? Because they'll go into a heavy discussion about this. Where's that selfie stick? Okay, so question, microphone. Look, we've got global support.
We were asking ourselves is there a policy towards substitutes? Like how many substitutes am I allowed to have?
Is there a policy? There's guidelines and recommendations. Guidelines and recommendations. Why is 21 substitutes? What's going on there? Does anyone know what's going on there? So what has happened is the members put an employee in. Right? But has not transferred the membership into the employee's name. So you've just got an employee sitting in there holding this space. But are they participating? Doesn't look like they're participating very much, does it? They're employee. Did the chapter accept an employee when they took the application? No, they accepted the business owner. So whose responsibility is it to set the guideline and standard for this chapter? Right, it's the membership committee's job to take care of this. We didn't accept an employee, we accepted you as the member. We need you to attend, or we need to open this category. Or they could say, oh, we want to switch it and make this person a member and you go. Either or. But they've got to do something, or they have to let everybody have 21 substitutes. Which is not a good thing. So that's a very good question. We don't have policies for everything. Can the chapter set its own guidelines and policies? They can go higher than us, but not lower than us. Right? They can go higher, but never lower. They have to maintain the standard, and we set the standard, right? We set a standard out there. They can set a higher standard, they just can't set a lower standard. And this chapter has done what? They've lowered the standard all over the place. They've lowered the red lines, so it hasn't worked well for them. So what 2 things would you change? What would be the first thing you'd change? Attendance. So if we just had everyone in the room, it's been proven, if you have everyone in the room, the number of referrals and the closed dollars go up, don't they? If you just show up. One of the things that really set us apart from the rest of the world is our attendance policy. How many times have you gone to a networking thing or another group and they say, we've got 500 members, but there's only 30 in the room? And every time you go, there's only 20, 30 in the room, but they have 500. Right? There's no attendance. So the attendance is critical to the chapter. So you have to help them discover that. So yes, number one is the first thing they will always choose is attendance. How would they change the attendance here? What would they need to do? They need to educate the room. Right? They need to put everybody at 0 and start fresh from day 1. And they need to educate the room that that's what they were going to be doing. So they can do a reset, but they have to do a reset for everybody. Say, starting today, everybody's at 0. The chapter can do that.
We cannot change on...
No, they don't need to change it on the system. There's nothing to change on the system. They just change it in the chapter. They're going, starting today, we're holding everybody accountable. You must be here. Right. And then they'll pull from that date forward. Correct. So attendance, what would be the second thing that would make a big impact? One-to-ones? Visitors? Effective one-to-ones. Effective one-to-ones. Exactly. I had a chapter, I went into the chapter, I saw that people were doing 100 one-to-ones and 200 and 300. I was like, what is going on? If they walked through the grocery store and said hi to each other, it was a one-to-one. If they went to the barber, it was a one-to-one. Right? Why do you think they were doing that? They lost track of the why. Why do we do one-to-ones? So we had to go in and retrain them on the importance of doing quality one-to-ones. They lost the why. They had made the mechanism, they were using the mechanism to keep their numbers up, but they lost the why, and the why was behind building stronger relationships and developing more referrals for one another. So always remember you have to go back to the why on each one of these. Why each one's important. Visitors, if they got every visitor off of 0, they'd get a whole lot more visitors, wouldn't they? If they said every member, you must be off 0. Everybody has to have a 1. It would shift everything too. So attendance. If everyone were in the meeting, we'd earn more money. And I always say to the membership committee, pick 2. Just pick 2. Because if you try to change everything, you're going to create chaos. So pick 2. If every visitor, if there were more visitors in the room, we'd pass more referrals, we'd get more business, right? More dollars. One-to-ones. If everyone were doing quality one-to-ones, we'd make money. We'll always make money if we're running the system correctly. So this is usually these are the 3 that they'll almost always pick. Your job now is to say, how can I help you with this? Because they're looking at you to tell them, what do I do now? What do we do? How do we fix this? Well, we could start enforcing attendance today. But you're going to need to educate the room that you're doing it. And tell them the why. I could come in and do a workshop for you on that. Your education coordinator could do a workshop. So you need to give them all of the information they need behind the why it's important, and let them know that you're willing to come in and help. Because they're going to be a little bit intimidated. Now, I did have one group look at all of this, and they did this to me. I had their entire leadership team, and they went, we've done all this before, we're not doing it again. And I said, okay, well, I'm good with that. Where do you think they are today? They're gone. They're closed. They went away. Because they just decided to do nothing. And into doing nothing, the chapter folded. And that was a chapter that had gone from 48 to closed. Now, it took them 2 to 3 years to get there, but 48 to closed. They chose nothing. So you have to say to them, well, I could come do a workshop on the importance of visitors. We could do a growth program for you. We could do some kind of a motivational contest to get everybody off of 1. Whatever. We could come in and do workshops on one-to-ones. What do you want us to do for you? Now that they've discovered it, they have to go back. And I say, now it's your job to go back and show this to your members and talk to your members about where you want your standard to be. Or you need to set the standard and tell them what the standard is going to be. Set the standard and tell them what the standard's going to be. Then live above the line. Just like you live your life above the line, make sure that your chapter is above the line. You guys offer to help them. So I always ask, which do they want to start with first of those three things? Which ones do you want to pick? And then they always pick attendance and one more. And I remind them again, the minimum you accept is the maximum you can require. So it's your job to protect all of your members and set a standard that you're proud of. And that's it. Simple workshop.